Hey guys, my name is Meshack Canyon. I'm a pastor at Friendship United Methodist Church in Wyoming, Ohio. And I want to talk about something that recently happened in our small city. So, near the middle of September, I met with someone from my church at our local coffee shop, Wyoming Community Coffee. And usually, when I meet with people there, we'll either sit down and talk outside because of the pandemic still, or we'll go on a walk and we'll kind of enjoy our coffee while talking. Well, on this particular morning, we decided to walk back to this person's home and have our coffee on their back deck. And this was about 8:15 a.m. So some kids are still on the way to school. It's still morning time, a lot of activity. So we walk to their house and we enter through a side gate that leads straight to their back patio. And about 5 minutes after we arrived there, we're sitting there, we're having our coffee, and two Wyoming police officers show up and they tell us that they received a phone call from someone saying that they saw two people that they didn't recognize entering their backyard. And since they were suspicious, they called the police to come and check on it. Now, look, I've had this happen to me before, or other black people that I know have had it happen to them enough times that I immediately knew what was going on. I mean, it's kind of obvious to me. And I'll give the cops some props because they responded with professional behavior, and even they're even quite apologetic, which lets me know that even they knew what was really going on here. And what was really going on is that someone saw a black man in the neighborhood, and that fact alone raised their suspicions, and it caused them to call the police to investigate. Now, I'll be honest, after I was done with my meeting with the person, I initially went back to work, kind of thinking I'm just going to let this slide. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. After all, even though it may not get as much publicity, this sort of thing does take place frequently enough that it's considered normal among some people, especially amongst black people. And it's nothing to be compared with all the other racial issues that are taking place around the country. So with all that on my mind, I thought I'm just going to go ahead and let this slide. But after I got home and I sat down to begin working, I couldn't focus on what I was supposed to be doing. And it's then that I realized that what happened impacted me a lot more than I thought that it would. See, when you're blamed or accused of doing something that you didn't do, it leaves a mark on you. And in this instance, it attacked my sense of belonging. And everyone I know, especially those people who live here in Wyoming, work hard to feel like they belong because this is a strong community-oriented neighborhood. And the fact that this happened within walking distance of my home, it really stung, man. It stung in ways that I wasn't anticipating. And it also brought about a sense of disappointment because I'm probably a bit naive, or as I'd like to say, I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And when you give somebody the benefit of the doubt, you hate to be let down like that. And it also brought about anger. For me, the anger came when I started thinking about all the what ifs. For example, what if the person I was meeting with was inside the house when the police showed up? How would that have changed the encounter? Or what if I responded angrily when the police told me that somebody made a call based off of a suspicious person? How might that have changed the encounter? Or even worse for me, what if this happened to my kids? Imagine the trauma that a kid would hold if the police officer came up to them and said, "We're here because somebody called and reported a suspicious person." Imagine how that might impact a kid's life or a kid's viewpoint from that day forward. So I decided that I couldn't just let it slide. Instead, I chose to do a few things about it. One of those things was to meet with our police chief, Rusty Herzog, to find out more about the situation because I wanted to learn about what happens in the aftermath of these incidents. And Rusty, for those of you who know him, Rusty has a great reputation of being willing to listen, and he's helpful. And the two of us had a really good conversation, of which I'm very grateful. A few main things that I took from our conversation was, number one, he said that after he listened to the call, it was clear to him that it was racially motivated. Number two, he mentioned that when people make non-emergency calls like that, the police officers or the person taking the call will ask them if they want some follow-up after they find out what happened. And in this instance, the person said no, which pretty much ends their involvement. He also said that one of the challenges that he faced was trying to figure out how to help people um, have proper suspicions, if I can say it that way. And I can respect that struggle because on the one hand, you want people calling the police if something suspicious is happening. But on the other hand, you don't want people having prejudice or bias as the motivation behind all of their suspicions. And quite frankly, it's not the job of police officers to make sure that community members are being trained on implicit bias. He also asked me if I had any suggestions or recommendations. And I told him that I think when someone calls the police on someone else, whether it's an emergency or not, there should be mandatory feedback to close the communication loop. That means some way of saying, thank you so much, you helped prevent a crime from taking place, or some sort of statement that lets the caller know that their suspicions were false. Something like, hey, we received a phone call from you because you were suspicious of some people in the neighborhood, but after our investigation, we discovered that it was a homeowner and a guest drinking coffee while having a good conversation. The reason for this suggestion is because the person calling the police has to bear the responsibility of that call. Because calling the police, in most cases, will have an impact on the person or persons for whom the call was made, whether it's founded on valid or invalid suspicions. And those who call based off of invalid suspicions and prejudicial biases should, at the very least, be aware that they were wrong, and the fact that because they're wrong, they made an innocent person have a traumatic experience based off of their biases. That may at least give them some time to question why it is that they were suspicious in the first place. Now, I understand that it may not be the police officer's place to close that communication loop with people who call to report things. That may add a bunch of work to officers who are already engaged in police work. But the fact of the matter is, when police investigate situations that are based off of racial biases, that's also a waste of their time and a waste of taxpayer money. For example, Rusty mentioned the See Something, Say Something campaign that began in America after the terrorist events of 9/11. That campaign encouraged a lot of people to call into police departments whenever they saw something suspicious. But the problem is that it jumps right from what one sees to the action that one takes. It doesn't help a person ask the question, why do I see things the way that I see them? Because something may be suspicious to you, not because it's actually suspicious, but because you've been taught to be suspicious of certain things. So rather than see something, say something, there needs to be a process of encouraging a personal responsibility for individuals to do the kind of self-reflection that will help a person understand why it is that they see the world the way that they see it, so that they can learn to make proper judgments so that they might act wisely upon what they've seen and how they've judged. So rather than letting this slide, man, I decided that it would be better to make the most out of this sad and unfortunate situation. I know that people hate talking about race. Indeed, kudos to you if you've made it to this part in the video, because a lot of people, as soon as they hear what the subject matter is, they're going to skip it and move on to something else. But you know, as my own small way of helping people become aware of the harmful subconscious thoughts and ideas that are governing their behavior, I've decided to make a few videos following this one that may present a practical way forward for anyone who's really interested in confronting the issues of racism in our communities. One of the videos is going to be on the rituals of life that rooted white supremacist ideas in the minds of all Americans. Another will be on the role of anger in addressing issues of injustice. And I'll also make one about how racism in America can be destroyed one person at a time rather than through making policy, even though I understand that policies are important and play a vital role. So if you're interested in seeing those videos, then please subscribe to this channel. Look, my aim is just to help facilitate helpful conversations. If I can do that, then to God be the glory. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care.